Going everywhere. There you go. Sending data online. Close that window. Quiet on the set. Just gonna wait a sec. Got the app open, so no one's watching yet. Last week I waited like a minute.
Only a minute?
Maybe 30 seconds, just so there's a few people. We got one. I should have like hold music. I guess this is hold music.
Yeah, that works.
Hello, everybody. That is Giants. Welcome to another session breakdown with Savoir. It's me, Paul, and
Lauren.
Lauren is joining us this week to talk about our tune. So welcome. Everything seems to be working, which is always the first challenge. Hi, guys. Hi, Blissy Cat on YouTube. So yeah, we are going to be doing this every week, breaking down the sessions, the production, and the songwriting behind all of these songs from our catalog. We started last week with Dreamers, so if you want to check that out after the video, you can go to our YouTube or our Twitch. It's going to be archived there. And this week, we're going to be talking about Giants. And Lauren, around when did we write this?
Gosh, I don't know. I don't want to age myself.
It's been a few years.
4 years ago.
Yeah, it is now, from the first time we started it, it is 5 years.
Yeah.
So this was a 2015 song. And for those of you that joined us last week for Dreamers, we talked a little bit about how sometimes songs take a very long time to finish. And sometimes they take long to write, too. This one, I was looking at all of our past emails and stuff, and even I thought it'd be fun to open this. But this is basically the session folder, as you can see. And we started this song. I called it Fresh Grass, Lauren.
Fresh grass?
I have a problem where I don't know how to like name things at first. So it was called, on January 24th of 2015, this song, Giants, was called Fresh Grass. And then after that, slowly but surely, it became the song that people actually know now. But as you can see, it was a journey from January 24th until essentially January 20, one whole year of working and workshopping and polishing. And we released it in 2016 in early February. And I remember because I was actually out on tour, Lauren, when we were doing that like final. We did a lot of like edits of this song because it was pretty long when we first started it, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, 2015 is when we started this guy. And hello to everyone who is joining us now. Let me see if that's working real quick. Yes, it is. Cool. All right. So like we started last week, I thought it'd be fun to play the first demo.
Oh, no.
That's part of this whole idea is that we're just going to be opening up here to ourselves and each other and all of you. So this one, like Dreamers, really started. We wrote, except for this one though, we wrote pretty much all of the music and all the melodies in an afternoon. I don't know if you remember, Lauren, but I'm pretty sure it was the same day that we wrote When the Summer Ends.
Yeah.
Which that's a whole other story, which I'm sure we'll do one week. That one took about, another couple years of coming back to it. But, and I'm sure, I don't know if you can read it, but this was titled differently as well that first day. So want to listen to that?
Yeah. What did we title it?
The Feeling Won't Fit.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the original demo, day one of Giants. Whole lot of that sound at the top there.
If you build your house out of bones, you'll never be alone. See your body exposed, just a vessel for your soul. And throw your heart in the river. If you can't let it go, just wait a little longer. Time is the only way to know. Stumble, repeat, stumble, repeat. Stumble, repeat, stumble, repeat. If the feeling won't fade.
Oh, excuse me, buffer size.
Oh.
Back to the chorus.
Throw your heart in the river.
Let's hear that one more time.
If the feeling won't fade, you'll just have to sit with it. If the feeling won't fade, you'll just have to sit with it. If the feeling won't fade, you'll just have to sit with it.
All right. Well, I guess I have to change my buffer size, ladies and gentlemen out there. It's a common problem.
Hey, Tommy.
Oh no. Yeah, Tommy is a Mr. Cat. I hope he doesn't turn anything off because that would be his. He has messed up a DJ set once, but it's hard because he's so cute. Anyway, ow. Oh God. Hello to everyone just tuning in. We just listened to the very first demo of Giants, which again, as you can tell, like for those of you that know the song, a lot of those melodies stayed the same. We mostly did workshopping with the lyrics after this. And also just for like a quick little context, in 2015, this was, a couple of years after Dreamers and Our Nature. This was when I was sort of figuring out what was the next step of the band. And Deidre had left, we stopped working together in 2014, and I started collaborating with a few people, most of which became working with Lauren. And we ended up writing, I think we probably did 1 or 2 sessions before this, but this was, I think, when we were like, oh, we're good together.
Yeah, I mean, I came all the way upstate and I stayed at your parents' house, and I think we just wrote that whole weekend.
Yeah, that was like one of the, and that was it might have been like When the Summer Ends in Giants on day 1, and then like Savages on day 2. It was a very
Yeah.
productive, and again, you never know when the songs are like done or if they're gonna make a record. But like in terms of, I do remember like driving back to the city and being like, that was really good.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot. But at that time, this song ended up having quite a journey, similar to some of other stuff, where it just, a very, very like a productive writing session, and then a lot of workshopping over time. Especially because, again, we didn't quite know what the future of the band was. We didn't even quite know, like, was it going to be Savoir Door? What was the vocal stylings? What direction aesthetically it was going to go in? But Giants ended up kind of becoming a centerpiece, and it was the single, really, of that record, The Love That Remains. So it was nice to see it sort of get the attention it deserved. But in terms of the writing, kind of wanted to dive in and talk about, obviously it's hard to remember every detail from a writing session, but I do remember starting with a Prophet 08, which is a Dave Smith synth, a modern synth, but analog, and sort of just with this ARP, which I'm going to solo now for a little bit so you can all hear. It's setting number 12, Tarkus, if anyone is interested in messing around with it. And then this little sparkle. Which was pretty magical. And that was the intro, all the choruses. And I remember, I think I found that patch, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but I'm definitely obsessed with the idea of finding very interesting pedal tones or ostinatos, basically like repeating patterns that stay on one pitch, and the way that that can sort of create a vibe or create tension against a chord progression. And I remember, I don't know if you were writing on piano or guitar, but it was C, A minor, F. And the way that like 1-6-4 progression worked against that ostinato was really pretty. I remember that was
Yeah.
something that was just like, that's one of my favorite parts about writing with people is like, I would never have thought of that chord progression. It was just one of those, it's like simple, but it just doesn't come out naturally.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I don't know, what else do you remember from those
Well,
first moments?
I don't remember a whole lot from that session because it was so long ago and I have a terrible memory, but I do know that uh, I didn't go into, I obviously knew Savoir and I knew you before I joined the band, but I didn't know the catalog like
Hmm.
all that well. And I purposefully like didn't listen to it because I didn't want it to I didn't want to try and write a certain way because I don't know.
Right.
So it really was a very just kind of inorganic thing that just came out of wherever, and that's what it was. And it was nice to kind of approach that session that way and
Yeah,
not worry about trying to do something specific.
totally. And especially at that point early on, we had probably only written a couple times together, and I'm 90% sure we hadn't finished anything either. So it was still sort of this like,
Yeah,
it was a open book. Is that the phrase?
sure.
Sure, it's a book can be open. Um, but yeah, I remember this being also sort of a different kind of more anthemic thing than we were naturally doing. What is the first instrument you started recording? Joao Pedro, who just asked a great question. Pedal tones and drones. Exactly. Someone asked, "What is the first instrument you started recording on on Facebook?" Joao Pedro, thank you for that. Yeah, we started with this Prophet synth. So weirdly enough, we actually started with what some might call the sparkle or the like sprinkles on top, which is often how I start songs, which doesn't make sense in a way, but at least in production it makes sense to me. So we started with this actually, which is just a very simple single note arp. And then I remember layering this over it, which is a super wide. I don't know, depending on how you're listening right now, you can either tell how wide it is, but the Prophet does a really cool thing where it shifts every second voice to a different panning. So it creates this really beautiful wide smeary thing, which I think creates a pretty, it creates this kind of cloud of energy. So we started with that, and then after Lauren wrote the chords, I think we might have had like a piano or something at the time, but we never recorded it. We used this bass, which is actually the same Prophet sound tweaked. So once we had that pattern sort of lent itself to this anthemic, the BPM, depending on how you want to think about it, it's either 160 or 80. And so we kind of went for it in terms of like, let's just write a big anthemic song and the production can match that. And so we used a bunch of sort of a combination of drum samples and live stuff that we had that I just tracked piece by piece. But it's actually a lot to the drum sound. That was the kick sound basically. And then the snare sound consists of a snare sample, which is very snappy, which is this one. Not that one, this one. A big sound, which is actually the same exact snare drum from Sea of Gold, because sometimes I'm lazy, So I just used that sample and then ended up kind of doing this cool, what I called here, snare lightning, which I feel like, I definitely think we did this already on that first day, because I remember us both being like, that's pretty cool. But it was just like a snare drum reverb, incredibly squat. Actually, let me see if some of this stuff I have hidden. No, see, that's not it. Snare 2? That's probably it. I kind of wanted to have some of this stuff available because this session, just to zoom out for a second. Oh, please don't crash. That would be embarrassing.
Uh-oh.
Can't crash on a live stream. It's fine. Just to give you guys a sense, this is how big the session is. So all in all, it's about, it's like literally twice the size of Dreamers. And it's just, because of the kind of song it is and also the vocals, we built a very anthemic group choir that I believe is about 10 of me, 10 of Lauren. I think maybe some of Alex, our guitar player's vocals in there too. I have to dig through and
Can
find
you?
it, but solo them.
Yeah, I bet there are some great ones to solo.
Whenever there's a very anthemic chorus part, maybe I don't know. That's a dangerous proposition. Soloing, me shouting or you shouting, it works.
Or Alex shouting.
Or Alex shouting.
I'm sure there are some great Alex shouts. We won't embarrass him
Yeah.
though when he's not here.
Yeah, maybe next time. So this that snare drum actually wasn't the one, but just to show you, I wanted to have something that had like a snare sound that had a little bit more sustain, so it kind of kept the energy up, and that's what ended up being this. If you can hear that, it's a really wide, sort of zappy. And so when you blend that in with a so it's almost like a cloud of distortion that kind of connects with the rhythm of the song. So when all the drums are put together, at least for that intro, they sound like this. And then against the arp. And then obviously from there, it just needed some weight. And we had that bass line, because up until all those parts still, just all that is a C major note. It's like, just a C. So then once the chord progression comes in, so yeah, after that, and it was funny because that first day, if we go back to that first demo, we didn't actually have, so there was no vocal part after the first day, but we knew later on there was a very, it was a good opportunity for a hook, right off the top. And I don't remember when we wrote that, but this ended up being the vocal part, which again, sort of comes right off the bat at the beginning of the song. And eventually we added a little guitar swirl to the top, which is what I end up doing every song. Just a little guitar thing. And then the vocal. And so that ended up being basically that was the intro, and that was probably done, I think, after a couple weeks of workshopping, and then that stayed the same forever. So just like Dreamers, in a way, the intros always get done first, and then everything else comes. Just for everyone tuning in, by the way, this is Paul and Lauren from Savoir. We are breaking down our song Giants. There's some good comments on Twitch, Lauren. I don't know if you see that. People are saying it's a little quiet. For those of you that don't know, we had a crazy weekend because we just joined Twitch a couple weeks ago, and thanks to the music team there, they actually put us on the home page for our DJ set on Saturday night. Every Saturday night we do a DJ set, and then Sunday morning we're doing a chill set together. And because of that, we had about like 20,000 people watching, which was insane. I'm kind of almost glad that didn't just happen now, because a lot of people will be like, this is a very specific thing, breaking down a session. But it would have been cool.
Yeah.
So for those of you on Twitch who are following us now, thanks so much. Yeah, we're going to do this every week. So hopefully you guys are checking out our tunes, because I'm sure we're going to go through sort of the most popular songs first. But after this, I think this song has a pretty interesting instrumental in general. So the verses were also something we wrote pretty quickly, as you can tell from that original demo. So I'll just play that really quick without the vocals. And this was a really fun one, because I think we had crafted a lot of that first weekend, where we were just like, we wanted it to almost feel, that was inspired by that Sun Lux album.
Yeah, yes. So I
Changes
think a
everything.
lot of what we did also in the beginning was share things back and forth of like things that were inspiring us or what we liked, and that was a good way to get to know what kind of things we wanted to do, and that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, I remember that was huge, because I think I hadn't listened to that song specifically. And for anyone who doesn't know, Sun Lux is an amazing three-piece band, but Ryan Lott, is that his name? Ryan?
Yeah.
Amazing, like, just the production is so out of this world and unique. And he has a song called Changes Everything, which was very like angular in its sort of like, it felt like there were all these like pulses of rhythm and energy. And so that was something I had never done. And I remember in the studio, we were like, why don't we build a verse where there is this sort of contrast between bursts of energy and then a vocal, instead of it just being, because a lot of music is very linear. It just kind of keeps going and it bounces. So for us, we were like, let's build those little pockets with a rest, and then the same kind of thing. And we just made those with, the sparkles are just backwards guitars and backwards Prophet. So there are a lot of like cut up little things like that. And then for me, what I think really brought it together was we ended up, our drummer at the time was Ben Marshall, and we had just finally gotten a rehearsal space, which we just didn't have one for a while. It's kind of hard in the city to have a full-time rehearsal space. But we were able to record drums just like in one afternoon, and he did these cool, fitting in with those bursts. Here, I'll put the click on. Basically, he did 2 tracks of fills, panned hard left and hard right. They sound like this. So when you layer that in, I think it added a really cool layer of energy to something that otherwise was, there was already like a cool idea there, but it didn't have enough. It didn't have enough like physical raw energy to it. So it was everything together. Verse part 2. So that was basically the structure of the verse. And again, that was done rather early-ish from what I remember, except the drums were added later for that extra bit of energy. But let me just unmute. I'll show you guys these layers of vocals, which we'll see if we can make active appropriately. There they go. Make active. So yeah, this was actually, again, just overall context. This was one of the first songs I didn't end up doing the final mix on, but we got it to a pretty close, like 90%. And I'm going to talk about the shootout later because I think it's so interesting. Not only did we
Oh
have someone
yeah, there
mix
was a
it,
shootout. How many people?
we had myself included 4 people do a shootout, and I won't mention the losers, but
I'm pretty
there's no
sure that I
losers.
didn't pick. I'm pretty sure my top choice was not the one that we
Well,
went with.
and you weren't like minority though. That was what was so interesting when we
Yeah.
actually I'll just mention this now because it's so fascinating. But we basically, once this was all done and we were happy with the production, we decided let's really go for it. We had finally a little bit of a budget with Network because we were signed with Network Records at the time, and so we got a shootout from a few mix engineers that were willing to do it, that we knew would do a good job. And the shootout was just, there was no definitive winner. Like
Yeah.
our manager Seth and Lauren and our guitar player Alex all had one pick. I was like really all about another pick, but there was no clear winner, which made for a really weird, because you hope in those situations that there's a clear winner. Because then we had to be like, well, what does that mean? But long story short, we did end up picking one. His name is Claudius Mittendorfer, and he ended up mixing the whole record. And he did, he brought out even more, I think, of the like weight and energy and kind of like power of this whole song. So it was really cool. But I'm mentioning that because this session is actually very much cleaned up, and this is super specific, and I'm not sure if anyone would care, but in terms of sending to mix engineers, they want everything, they don't want plugins just flying around. They want things really cleaned up. So as you can see here, every single vocal channel had been printed down to something neater. There are no plugins except for an occasional EQ that I like have notes in the side on. So this is a very cleaned up session, much more clean than Dreamers was. But basically the vocal, I think from really early on, I knew I wanted this vocal to be sort of energetic, similar to one of our older songs called Bodies, where I'm almost like shout singing a lot of it. So this should be coming through. And I'm just going to mute all these crazy plugs for a second.
You build your house out of bone.
Yeah. So
You'll never be alone.
there were a lot of layers to this. I think that was like one of the early on takes. But it really took a few tight layers to make it sound the way it does now.
If you build your house out of bone,
So I'm just going to layer them in.
you'll never be alone. And see your body exposed. It's just a vessel for your soul.
I want to try and find where are the shouty ones. Is it this guy?
If you build your house out of bone,
That's not that guy. It's this guy.
build your house out of bone, you'll never be.
Wow. See, the solo game never disappoints.
If you build your house out of bones, you'll never be alone. See your body exposed. Just a vessel for
That's a good one.
throw your heart in the river. If you can't let it go.
Proof 246 asked, do you quantize them or are you forced to try to record until you're able to have them layered? Yeah, I never quantize vocals. It's just I don't really get there are some really good plugins like Vocal Line and stuff that I know do that job for you, but I mean, as you can see here, these are just printed from a little bit of auto-tune, but basically if it didn't fit, I just re-recorded. I would just re-record the phrase until it was perfectly locked in. And also, to be fair, part of what makes these vocals sound interesting to me is that they're not perfect. So, this is all of them together. They're not really super locked.
If you build your house out of bone,
I guess they're pretty locked.
you'll never be alone. And see your body exposed. It's just a vessel for your soul. And throw your heart in the river. If you can't let it go. 'Cause your soul grows bigger than your body ever knows.
So at that point, I still wanted to have them be a little smearier and like kind of modulated. So this was something we did a lot on The Love That Remains, and this went for my vocals and also for Lauren's throughout a lot of the songs. Ended up using this Uber mod, I'm so happy that everyone can see the plugins this week because last time they weren't opened. But I would use a pretty deep chorus on the vocal bus to kind of create this smeary sound, and you can hear one by one how it makes a difference
House
without
out of
it,
bone.
and then you add it.
You'll never be alone and see your body exposed.
And what's cool about that too is because there's a modulation on it, it kind of it creates this like almost chorus wash effect between the vocal takes themselves. So the pitch becomes almost more implied than it does locked in, which I think is really cool. And like a lot of great bands in the 80s and new wave bands like the Cocteau Twins used to do that. They would put like phaser and chorusing on the vocal itself, and it just kind of makes it feel a little more like larger than life, a little special. So ended up using, in addition to the Uber mod, a C4 compressor. And some of this is a little bit just like, I will always preface these discussions with A, there is no right or wrong way, and B, I have no idea what I'm doing a lot of the time. So a lot of it is experimentation, and I'm sure some of it doesn't make sense from a mixing standpoint. But I think from a production standpoint, it creates a very distinct sound. So basically starting with the Uber mod, then slamming it with a C4 multiband, adding a little bit of phaser, and Sound Toys is amazing, as everyone knows, and then another C4 at the end to just really lock it all in, and then you can hear the way it sits.
If you build your house out of bones, you'll never be alone and see your body exposed. It's just a vessel for your soul.
I apologize. The phaser was not on, actually. That was bypassed, so it should just sound like this.
If you build your house out of bones, you'll never be alone and see your body exposed. It's just a vessel for your soul.
And yes, Melosifer on YouTube asked, so that's how you get that wide, smooth vocal sound. Totally. I mean, that's what's really cool about the Uber mod is it actually makes, as you can see here, there's a width. I don't know how 200% is even possible, but at this time, I guess I just wanted that vocal to feel as wide as possible, and especially against whatever was going on in the kick drum and the bass, which was all super centered. So when you put the instrumentation back in, you'll see, the vocals are super wide.
If you build your house out of bones, you'll never be alone and see your body exposed. It's just a vessel for your soul. Then throw your heart in the river if you can't let it go, 'cause your soul grows bigger than your body ever knows. Stumble, repeat, stumble, repeat.
So that was it. And you'll see how that smear, someone asked about like how many layers of vocals we use in the panning. I had to restart the restream for a second. Oh, now there are 5,000 people here. I was wrong. Well, hello everyone that's here. Guess it wasn't updating before. If you are just joining us, because apparently I didn't update my restream app, we are doing a breakdown of our song Giants, which is on our third record, The Love That Remains. But someone asked about how many layers and panning and stuff like that. And to be completely honest, when it comes to vocal layering, just like I never use a template in Pro Tools sessions for the same reason, because I just don't think, I want every song to kind of be unique. And I find that if I stick to certain rules, they won't be, even in terms of like treatment of vocals. On this record, though, we did a lot of this treatment, which was a combination of heavy compression, vocal layering, and then some modulation to kind of smear it. And I want to kind of fast forward, too, to see if your vocals had the same, I believe they did have the same effect. So let's just move over to that. But yeah, for the most part in layering, a song like this especially, I do believe in doubling because of the cool, unique quality it gives to a vocal. So commonly, whatever part is sung, if it's a light part, if it's a full voice, if it's distant, I'll almost always double it and then space it in a way so there's width for that take. So it'll be like a light vocal really far out, heavy duty vocals. Usually you want to have the more intense vocals dead center so that they cut over the mix. And that's something, we'll see in some of these sessions. But this one is pretty smeary overall because it was all about having this washy, sort of vibey group of vocals. And on that note, I should really just open up this chorus too, because that's kind of the epitome of it and very similarly treated. Let's see if it doesn't crash. And it didn't. Good. But I guess before we get there, Lauren, do you want to tell us about this pre-chorus?
Oh gosh.
And
Well, I don't know.
for context,
Stumble, repeat, stumble,
Oh.
repeat.
Yeah, I'm like,
Get
what
off your
is the
feet,
pre-chorus?
get off your feet.
Yeah, well, we kind of went back and forth with that one because then I think now we feel like the lyrics don't really make sense.
exactly.
But in general, I know when we were writing, I was very much in a like meditative space in life. And, you know, I feel like my relationship with Giants is more to do with the melody and the lyrics, like the top line, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think it was just this idea of always fucking up as a human, and that's just what life is. And so I was very just, thinking about things in that context, and those words worked, stumble, repeat.
Yeah. And that kind of, I think what's funny about that line is, as we realize you get on your feet, right?
Get off your feet.
You get on your feet when you want to
You
like
get
make
on
a
your
difference
feet, yeah.
and make a
And
change,
for
but there was
some
something
reason we said get off your feet, like,
we didn't catch that day one, right? Like we were just like, this sounds great.
yeah.
And it was one of those like happy accidents, I feel like. Because to me, it's really interesting because get off your feet kind of signifies almost this like transcending any sort of idea of, getting on your feet.
Right.
But yeah, just again, because we've been talking so much about like production and stuff, this is actually Lauren's notebook from the first day. And so you can sort of see the original sketches of this whole idea. If you build your house out of bones, you may
Can you
never.
read it?
Yeah, I can't read it that well. Lauren, you probably. You may never feel alone.
Uh, yeah, you may never feel alone.
Yeah.
As you see your body for what it really is.
Right.
I think when I'm writing or when we're writing lyrics, it's really just like stream of consciousness first, like
Yeah.
what's this idea that we're trying to say, and then slowly edit it down to something that makes sense. That's probably what everybody does, but
Well,
it's funny to kind of see it in like a poetry context first.
totally. Well, and this is, I think, what, and this is like this for any collaboration that I think works. It's interesting because my approach always to building a melody or lyric is just mumbling. And like simultaneously, you are very connected to what the deeper meaning of a song from the get-go. And I feel like it works because I often have a hard time where I'm like trying to find out the meaning for years later. And like when we're sitting there together, we were writing the song, I remember Lauren, like by the time I was done tracking some drum ideas, you were like, I've got this and I've got an idea and this will be the core, the kind of like the mission statement of the song. And so from there, I think we just extrapolated from this first lyric sheet, just to make it a little more heady. And it became,
If you build your house out of bone, you'll never be alone. And see your body exposed, just a vessel for your soul. And throw your heart in the river if you can't let it go. 'Cause your soul grows bigger than your body ever knows.
for those of us just joining us because they were asking, we're not making a song today. We are actually going to do some live sessions in the future because we think it'd be pretty fun to do like basically this entire process, but in real time for you guys to check out. But this is a song. This was the single on our third record, which if you're digging all these sounds, please give us a follow on Spotify, check it out. But this is a song called Giants, which we're just breaking down the session and the songwriting process. So yeah, that verse was done, and then that pre-chorus sort of lifted into this chorus, which the writing of the chorus was very interesting because, like we said before, this was early on in when Lauren and I started collaborating. And so at this time, I was still kind of bouncing around, figuring out what was the future of the band. And so I ended up, we had the whole melody of the chorus after the first day, but then I ended up writing new lyrics and then coming back. I wrote new lyrics with Zach, a good friend of mine. And then we came back and I workshopped them with Lauren after that. But that's where the idea of Giants kind of came out of this overall concept, though. Because originally, yeah, if the feeling don't fit, it's the same first line. Let's see if I can open all these vocals to show you guys. Speaking of
Yeah.
vocal layering, this is definitely, some of the most vocal layering we've done. Okay, this is, why don't I hear it? Oh, because it's muted.
You'll just have to stick with it. Got a soul so big. We were giants at the start of it. No, we're never gonna quit. Not even just a little bit. No, we're never gonna quit. We are giants, giants, giants at the heart of it.
Sweet. I'm glad this all still played. We had one question about the layering. On YouTube, Melosifer asked, when you multi-track vocals like that, are you using auto-tune to make them track with each other better and iron out little pitch drifts? Yes and no. A lot of times for the main, like most connected full voice parts, we'll use auto-tune, but then for the ones that are a little bit more distant, like, or stuff like that, which is very shouty, as you can tell, that was not in tune. I think it's important not to tune everything the same because if everything is, especially if everything's auto-tuned the same, you start getting some weird phasing problems and it actually makes it sound smaller, because if you really had a group of people singing in a choir, part of what makes it sound so big is the little pitch differences that kind of waver between vocals. So I would say, yeah, auto-tune's important for like, as long as a group, as a body, it seems in tune, which is what this, and I'll just put a guitar in there.
You'll just have to stick with it.
Whoops. I don't want a new session. Just do that.
If the feeling don't fit, you'll just have to stick with it. Got a soul so big. We were giants at the start of it. No, we're never gonna quit. Not even just a little bit. No, we're never gonna quit. We are giants, giants, giants at the heart of it.
So as you can see, yeah, pitch-wise, it was all locked in, and that just comes down to being willing to do multiple takes sometimes too, which, who's got the time? We got plenty of time now. Plenty of time for vocal takes. But yeah, let's see. What else is on the list, Lauren? What should we talk about next? I kind of jumped around with lyrics of this a little bit, but maybe I should talk about that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, the lyrics are kind of pretty straightforward. I guess it's
Yeah.
interesting. Well, I think I don't know if it's okay to say it this way, but I feel like maybe what we started with was a little bit more obscure.
Right.
And then when you workshopped it with Zach, it became a little bit more like, I don't know what the correct word is. I don't want to say
Poppy?
like necessarily pop or commercial, but it's
Yeah.
like more relatable or
Right.
just kind of like a little bit more tangible to more people, which is something that you do sometimes when
Yeah.
you're trying to make a song that you want a lot of people to like and listen to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely compare, the verse vocals and sort of the original ideas to then the chorus was definitely, I mean, I think it totally makes sense, and it's also totally part of the process that I think people go through a lot, especially being like an indie rock band that also wants to reach a bigger audience. You want your chorus to be powerful, relatable, but still cool, and it's a fine balance that you always sort of walk. And this again was early on, so this was still I was kind of collaborating with a bunch of people at the time to finish the song. So in a way, who knows what we would have done, specifically, but
Yeah.
that's the kind of the beauty of songwriting, is that it's like unpredictable.
Everything can exist in so many different ways. It's crazy. You could drive
Yeah.
yourself crazy. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As someone who's learning how to produce themselves, with a session that is this big,
Hmm.
how do you approach it? Like, how do you organize it in your brain, as far as you're trying to get something from something that sounds pretty good to something that sounds polished?
Yeah.
So do you think about it from a like sound by sound? Like, do you think about it as a group of sounds? Like, let's work on the drums at this point, or
Right.
do you think about everything working with each other? What are the steps that you take from like A to Z?
It's a great question. I will say, like, part of this is personal, and then part of it is just learning from like tips from different people and like arrangement, just ways of filling out a song. I do think, and I talked about this on Dreamers too, but like the most important thing with any production is arrangement. I mean, that's everything. And it comes down to obviously what a traditional band sounds like. So it's like very often you'll go through and you'll be like, oh, well, we've got the chords, we got the song, so we got to now do the rhythm section and guitars and bass and keyboard and stuff. But for me, I almost always break it down in terms of ostinato, a pedal tone. Almost every song that I work on will have that. So for me, it creates the tension. So for example, the chorus, filling out the chorus was really the most, that was like the challenge of this song, which all of it started with what started the intro. It's the prophet bass and the trillion and this harp. So the chorus kind of begins the same way. So for me, it's usually, now I've got this vibe, every frequency range, I want to have some energy or a part that plays off, they should play off one another. Because if you have a song that's just like, top to bottom, just squashed with stuff, it's not going to sound good. Everything needs to have counterpoint, whether that's rhythmical counterpoint or harmonic counterpoint, melodic counterpoint, so that it actually creates space for one another. So for me, it was like I wanted that drum with the bass. And I'll mute. This is just bass and drums. And once that feels powerful, I kind of knew, okay, well, we need to fill this out with some mid-range space. So not the low end of the spectrum, not the super high end, that kind of stuff. And so for me, it's always going to a pad. And I have a bounce, but I also have the very, let's see if it'll still come up. I think everyone can hear that. So this is the Tal Uno Lux, which is, can't recommend this enough. It's a software emulation of a Roland Juno 60. What's great is you can even find like the original factory presets. And it's cool because it's a very simple synth, but you can use it in a way that like an old synth would be used. Like you just want to have a pad, so here's a pad, and this is like a perfect pad for this. So functionally, that's about filling out space, because you want a chorus, especially in contrast to that verse, which is so angular and sort of sparse.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted that chorus to feel full, big, lots of energy. So it was really about just, experimenting. And we tried a bunch of stuff, I remember, and then it was really that pad that warmed it up. And then there was a side chain. This is a Korg Triton. So it sounded like this. Which is a patch. it's a patch on the Korg Triton Extreme, I believe, called the Stereo M12. We actually used that patch on Dreamers as well 7 years earlier. It's weirdly, that Triton is like just a synthesis, a kind of a basic digital synthesizer, but it has a lot of really fun vintage emulations, and that one was like perfect for filling out a little bit more edge. So the pad along with the Triton sound like this. So to me, you know, again, Lauren's question earlier, we were talking about what are the steps really in terms of filling out an arrangement and knowing how to like build something. And I think so much of it has to do with, you know, the function. The chorus, the function of this chorus is to feel big and full and emotional. So for me, it was like, how do we fill out that space without things interfering with one another? And so that sort of represented the mid-range. And then the final step for me on that was guitar stuff, which almost always, and this is just how I end up playing guitar, but also how a lot of Savoir songs start. Most of the time, the guitar parts are just the top 3 strings. So I'm lying, that's not. But these are the top 3, and then the high line. Yeah. So these are basically just like a little triangle like that, which you can't really see. But it's this, it's actually, it's, guitar's out of tune. But it's this shape, and this is the exact same shape that is the majority of Dreamers, and yes, I know, One Trick Pony, but what's nice about these shapes is that they don't have too much low-end information. So they add a little shimmer like this without adding too much weight. They fit in the mix really nice. And then you add the lower guitars. So these kind of fit in with the pads. I named these chords pretty chord left and pretty chord right, which I guess they are. And so, yeah, it's really just about finding function, and then obviously, you know, being in a sort of, we're a rock band, so there's almost always this like, how are we going to play the song live in an arrangement that is traditionally like 4 or 5 people? So just again, to show you the sort of how it all ended up with guitars and everything, I'll mute the vocals. This is what the chorus ended up sounding like. Oh, and there's also this really beautiful, again, talking about ostinato. That is muted. Where is it? Bear with me. There's a nice little piano part that we added later. It's got to be here somewhere. Like I said, guys, this is a big, perhaps too big of a session, but there should be a piano part in here somewhere that I accidentally, oh yeah, here it is. Piano mod bounce. So what's nice about this is it has that ostinato, the high C octave with the bass line behind it. And we actually originally ended the song with that too, Lauren. I don't know if you remember, but that was another one of those.
Yeah. I did also want to say that I remember now when we started it, we were trying to write a song that kind of had the same chord progression in the verse and the chorus. So
Right.
with the idea being that some of the best songs that have ever been written are only 3 chords, and how do
Right.
you make, how do you showcase, or how do you show the difference between a verse and a chorus if you're using the same chords, etc. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that, I think that connects back to like this song being an exercise in contrast, you know, because the chorus is just so full and driving, and then the verses are so angular and sort of sparse at times. But yeah, that's true. I remember that as being like a key part of it too. And it's just, a lot of it just had to do with layering, because I think this is, as you can see, like, it's a pretty dense chorus, but everything is shaped in a way to really fill it out. So let me see. Yeah, this is how the chorus ended up instrumentally.
Get off your feet, get off your feet.
Yeah, and from there it was a lot of just, you know, you can sort of have fun in the last 10% of production, I feel like, which is where you just add things to have a little bit more attention grabbing. Like we ended up adding the sparkles back to the second verse and a cool filtered drum kit, which is this right here, which is literally just a live drum kit compressed down. Yeah. The second verse otherwise is pretty similar except for that breakdown. Second chorus just gets super, super big. And then one part of the song that I think is great is Lauren's solo in the bridge, which let me just make sure all those vocals. Where are they? Oh, the chorus vocals. Pardon me. Oh yeah, we have my vocals in there too.
Yeah.
But sorry, actually, I'm gonna back up because I forgot that one other note on this song is it definitely was much longer originally, and we kept we like every
Oh,
few
yeah.
months would cut out a measure, cut a measure here, and then also just pressure of our record label wanting the song to be, you know, people always joke about how songs need to be like 3 minutes and 30 seconds, but the struggle is real and it's a real pressure that people put on you. And even coming down to Spotify playlisting, now people talk about, oh, well, if the song's too long, they're not going to put it on a playlist. And, you know, all this stuff, unfortunately, is kind of, it hurts artistry for the sake of just packaging things for for consuming a little easier and for packaging in a playlist and it's hard. It's one of the biggest struggles, and like I think every musician that I know personally goes through this too, where like they have a really long intro, and the first thing anyone says is, "Oh, well, you might want to cut that intro in half," and it's like, or maybe you don't.
But I like
you
that
know?
intro.
But I really like that intro, and it's part of, I think about like U2's Where the Streets Have No Name, and it's like 2 minutes before any vocals come in, and I'm just like, that's one of the greatest songs of all time. So you know what? Anyone listening out there, don't cut your intros in half. Don't let them tell you what to do. The powers that be. But all that to say, yeah, we cut this song up quite a bit. But
Yeah.
after the second chorus, we had a kind of a fun little guitar solo, which we hadn't done in a lot of songs. So that is our little guitar solo there, which is a layer of a lot of different things. Redenbacher09 on Twitch asked, do you ever maintain a final version for easy consumption and then an uncut version for yourself that fulfills your vision? You know, I mean, we think about that stuff. It's sort of like a director's cut, for
I
the way.
think we did. Didn't we keep a, we did have a, I thought Giants, we did have a radio cut
The funny
and
thing
a
about
little longer one.
we did end up making even a shorter radio edit that cut out the solo completely. That's what it was.
Right, right.
So
right.
yeah, to
Okay.
answer your question, we totally do, and I think a lot of artists will do a radio edit specifically for that purpose. But what's weird now is that because albums are being consumed in a playlist fashion as well, that even there's a pressure for your album cut to be short. Because most people are not listening to full albums. Most people are
Yeah.
listening to one song amongst 30 other songs that are sort of packaged to fit someone's taste, which is, it's tricky. It's tricky in the context of a full album. But yeah, to answer your question, we do that sometimes. But on our last couple records, like this song, for example, we ended up making edits right up until we made an edit after mastering, which the song was already done, and we still made another edit. And then we made an even shorter edit for the radio. So, but this right here, this section actually, and we'll play the ending. This is the longest version of the song. It clocks in at 4 minutes and 44 seconds, which is probably why everyone wanted to make it shorter, which is unfortunate. I'm glad some people on Twitch said, this is not that cringy. I guess there's a lot of music. I love watching all the comments, and I'm glad, thank you for being positive, 99% of everyone out there, because we're just, we're all stuck at home, and we're just trying to have fun, and this, I think, I've enjoyed watching there, because we're just, we're all stuck at home, and we're just trying to have fun, and this, I think, I've enjoyed watching other bands do this, and it kind of came up as an idea earlier this month, so for everyone watching and having a good time, we appreciate it. And do let us know if you have any questions at all. We're just hanging out. We're just going through the whole session, and then we'll definitely answer any other questions you might have. But yeah, just to give you a little insight into this guitar solo, I really love Native Instruments, the guitar rig setup, especially for crazy affected things. I think for very clean guitars, I tend to, you can't really see it in here right now, but I usually record with a Vox amp, the real deal. But then often, especially if I'm sketching ideas on tour or something, Native Instruments guitar rig is great for just crazy sounds. So this is all direct, but then this is actually a real guitar. And a similar tremolo thing. Which sounds really cool, but it's all that really is you put any guitar players out there or people who are doing this in sessions, you just put a ton of delay and a ton of reverb and a ton of distortion on your guitar, and then you do this. You just do that as fast as you can. So, secrets
Did you tell
out.
them what you call that?
Secrets out, kids. It's called me spazzing. It's called, well, I don't even know why. It's called tremolo picking, I guess. But it doesn't even really make sense because then the tremolo bar, there's like a lot of terms. Someone likes your loft, Lauren.
Oh, my makeshift.
Lauren's studio is pretty cool.
It's cool, except I have lots of critters.
Can you tell us, let's take a quick break for, I wish I had like built a little video segue where it was like time for Lauren's critters. Tell us about your adventures.
Today I have wasps. I've got snakes outside. I had a bat the other day, and a baby bear, was on my porch the other morning as well. So it's full on like Snow White out here.
I mean, yeah, at least it was a baby bear.
Yeah, it was a baby bear. I still screamed though.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone for anyone who's seen a bear, they're big. They're really big.
Yeah.
There was one. What are your thoughts about the business side of music business? Like having to spend time and effort promoting instead of creating. Ooh, the business side of the music business is really, really hard. And that is often why it's great to try and find people to work with that you really believe in, who can communicate your vision, communicate sort of what you want to other people. And it's hard though. It's an ongoing struggle because no one is ever going to represent you as well as you are. So you constantly have to fight for what you want. I think that's like, that's the hardest part. And the business side of the music business right now is kind of more complicated than ever because it's really hurting, there are incredibly successful artists who are still struggling and working 2 jobs and that kind of stuff. So you have to just find ways to get by. And in some ways, you have to not depend on it. God, we could talk about that forever, but maybe more on that another time. But for now, this is the purely fun stuff. But yeah, it's a hard question. It really is. And it's distracting, which is why you have to sort of compartmentalize working on working on your art, and then obviously figuring out how to get it to people.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that the bridge, and then gosh, that's pretty much the ending. There was a fun thing I wanted to show in terms of how I worked out this filter, because the bridge has this really cool build-up, and this is something, you know, obviously that is done a lot in dance music, but I don't think it's done for fun a lot in like rock music. But it's really like a long filter sweep, but with the arp. So this is basically all building a slow filter opening. And I can show you guys exactly what that is. But you know, filters are probably the most, someone was like saying, I forgot when this was like the most important instruments in modern music. And I would argue that the filter is one of the most important instruments. And although it's not really an instrument, it's just, you know, it's essentially filtering a signal by cutting out certain frequencies and boosting others. So as you can see here, what's happening to the Prophet, but this is, you know, everyone knows this. The beginning of every pop song in the last 5 years starts with a filtered piano. But this is what this one does. You can see it. Sweeps down, and then it's automated to sweep back up with a distortion after the filter so that it squeezes it all together as if it was an analog filter. There it goes. Look, Ma, no hands. And then it hits right on the final chorus. And that's another thing to remember in terms of, you know, we were talking a little bit about how do you make these choices for each step of the way in terms of building an arrangement and a production. And, you know, it's the hardest thing is knowing when it's done, you know? And I think often, for the sake of, in terms of this song, it was easier to tell when it was done because we just like physically ran out of space. There's just so many vocals that we had to like really, you know, tweak together. And again, I think we started talking about this, but similarly to the verses, there is layers and layers of saturation, compression, modulation. And this is not always the answer, you know? But if you're going for this wall of sound, smeary, sort of, you know, this is almost like dream rock, if that makes any sense, because we're in essence a dream pop band, and we sort of take from a lot of like indie rock elements from the 80s. But this is the most like kind of just rock and roll song of ours, so we still wanted a touch of that dreamy quality to the vocals, which it was really interesting to do it this way. And on top of it, you know, we didn't really talk about reverbs. Who likes reverb out there? Show of hands. Oh no, my reverb doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, your smear counter is at 27.
Thank you, Corey. Definitely at 27. Unfortunately, over the years, there's some reverbs I don't have anymore, like this Altiverb, so I'm just going to replace it with this Valhalla Vintage Verb. For all of you reverb fans out there, this is a really good one, and it's $50. So this is all the full chorus effects. Little harmony. It's fun. I think we added that harmony in the second and third choruses. But again, super smeared out in a way that kind of connects with the cloud of sound we were talking about earlier, you know? Smear counter up to 50, I would say. Yeah, so we got some love for VST. Did you read the Wiki article about your band? Apparently, the Wiki article about our band has some sentences written in Indonesian. You know, I'm not surprised. I'm just not surprised at all. And our Wikipedia has said some weird things over the years because it's really hard to
You
control
can't
that.
edit your own.
You can try, and then it like finds a way to like kick you off. Um, Jeremy asked, "Do you ever consider how other groups may intend to remix your material while you're constructing a sequence?" Um, you know, not really, to be honest. I mean, I think it kind of connects in the same way to building an arrangement in general, which is just like super strong vocal, right? I think that sort of, because we never even know which songs of ours are going to be remixed. We've had some cool remixes in the last few years, but you almost never know until we're able to like, got to pay for them, figure out what the release plan is.
This one had a couple really cool ones.
That is true. Gosh, we had Leno, Finnish DJ producer, remix this. It was so.
It was so good. I mean, I liked it so much. We started playing it live, the two of us.
Yeah, on our last tour actually, because Lauren and I did a duo set. We ended up playing this remix of this song just because it fit more in the like. I like that actually you guys can just see my whole screen now. So this is the Leno remix of this song, which is kind of cool to hear. He jumps right to the chorus.
If the feeling don't fade, you'll just have to stick with it. Got a soul so big. We were giants at the start of it. No, we're never gonna quit. Not even just a little bit. No, we're never gonna quit.
Great drop.
We are giants, giants, giants. The heart of it.
And the coolest
So
thing about
groovy.
remixes, I know, I mean, Lauren and I probably, I don't know about you, but I almost like that version better than our version.
I was gonna say that, but then I wasn't sure if that was allowed.
I
But
think it's
I
okay,
definitely, yeah.
By the way, I keep looking over this way because Lauren is on another monitor over here. So probably look crazy, but she's over there. To me, she's over there. But yeah, that was a pretty cool remix that we ended up playing a lot. And obviously you can see just how different a song can be,
Yeah.
It's like totally different BPM, totally different vocal treatment, basically like halftime instead of the way we kind of pushed it forward. But gosh, yeah, I mean, this is a big, big song. I think we pretty much talked about everything. I mean, I will say, even after we finished the shootout mix, which was so interesting, and actually, I don't know if should I just show everyone the shootout mix really quick, the email chain. I meant to
Oh.
I meant to save it somewhere. I'm afraid of opening my email in front of everyone, so maybe I'm not going to do that. 'Cause it's like, what is that? Whatever. Let's just see if I can find this email chain because it's so interesting because I'll do it over here. That's what I'll do. This is something that we had never done before and it was just really, really fascinating. And so basically we sent around to our record label and to our managers and everyone. And, this is like a typical email chain trying to like figure out what's the winner, And at the end of the day, this is what was so interesting is that there was no unanimous choice. These were, 1 through 5 of different remixes. And it was just
different
fascinating.
mixes.
What's up?
Just different mixes, not
Yes.
remixes, like
Sorry.
final mixes.
We had a few mixing engineers do basically, on spec, they were generous enough to just kind of pitch their mix, and then we picked the favorite one, and obviously, and work with that engineer who ended up being an amazing mix engineer named Claudius Mittendorfer, who he had worked with Weezer and a bunch of other like kind of big modern rock bands. It was like perfect for this song. But it was just so interesting because even after our work was all done, we did all of this, printed everything, and then there was still a month, a month of back and forth deciding which mix to go with. who to hire, and then even after that, we were still editing it down to be, sort of appropriate for alternative radio and stuff like that, which is what we were promoting the song to. So, guys, this one was a journey, and it's a huge
Yeah.
session. Lauren, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? I'm just looking at our notes here.
Yeah, I looked through the notes too, and I think we kind of covered most things. I mean, it's really interesting to me to listen to you talk about so much of the production that took place because my general role is like, oh, this would be cool. Can you do this? And then you do it, and I don't really always know how you're doing it. So it's nice to hear the fact that like your snare drum had four components in just the one sound.
That's true. I mean, this is one thing that I like about working with you, Lauren, if I do say so, here on this live stream in front of 5,000 people. Lauren, very often in these, when we're working on sessions, because it'll often, we'll write the song together or we'll do a little bit of back and forth. But then very often when we're building out the final stuff, you will be like, what about this? What about this? Like you're like the idea person who just throws these ideas out, and then I kind of just like interpret the idea. And this is I love that they love each other. That's a comment. I mean, we do love each other, but we are not together. It's people just we are both married to other people. But Lauren comes up with these great ideas, and then we sort of just like experiment with sounds, which I think often is it's kind of my strong suit, just in terms of like trying a lot of different shit, because that's at the end of the day, any producer, most producers I think will be honest about that and say like they're just experimenting with different ideas until something fits. It's like
Yeah.
the amount of snare drums I pulled into this session. It's like originally this was just the beat. It was like a snap snare and this one kick drum, and like that's cool. It's cool and really punchy, but you're like, that kick drum needs a little bit of raw energy. So this is a kick drum that's one of my samples from my drum kit. All of a sudden there's more energy, And then the same goes for the clean kick. And then I still wanted it to be a little bit more edgy, so this tom was perfect. This is it's called damaged toms for contact, if anyone's interested. And so that, and then there's live toms. I ran into the studio and did this. So those are actual real toms that I played. And so altogether, that's essentially like just the kick drum. And the same goes for the snare drum. It's just this experimentation, which I think it's really fun working with you, Lauren, because you're always like, Lauren, you say this sometimes where we're working on a song and you're like, it still sounds like a demo, which you don't, I mean, it sometimes breaks my heart because I'm like, I thought it was done. And you'll be like, well, I hear you, but it still sounds like a demo. And that's when I start pulling out more snare sounds. Lauren, I don't know if you can see the question, but Melosifer on YouTube asked, do you find it easier to collaborate face-to-face or remotely? Do you find any advantages to each?
Well, I mean, I'll say I definitely find it easier to collaborate face to face. But then I'll also say that because we haven't been able to, it has empowered me to do a lot more on my own than I would have otherwise, which is a whole different kind of exploration. So it's a double-edged thing. But yeah, like most things, I prefer to do most things in person.
Yeah. I hear you. This is definitely the longest Lauren and I have not been in the same room together. I think we're approaching 3 months now. It's hopefully all over soon. But yeah, it is bizarre. And working remotely is tough, It's like there are certain things we can do, and then passing ideas back and forth is one thing, but it's especially once you have a really good collaborative spirit, a really good like comfort working with someone, it's then a bummer to then be like, oh, I guess now we're just emailing each other snippets,
Yeah.
It's like, come on. We
I
worked
just
so
feel like
hard.
you can get so much more done in person. I don't know. Like, it's just much harder to do it virtually because there's a lag, and so
I think
automatically
so.
it's like seconds longer, and
Yeah,
then
and
it's just
just that
hard.
ability to like feed off each other's energy and be like point at this or point at this instrument or jump,
Right.
run around. I'm just looking if everybody tuning in. Thanks again. This is still new for us. I think this kind of stuff is new for a lot of people. But we're having a lot of fun doing it, and we're glad you guys find it interesting because we're gonna keep doing new things. I think we've talked about doing a live session where we actually write a song similar, to this process. On that note, remotely, of course.
We'll
Maybe,
try.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
try. Maybe in a couple more months because we're actually both upstate and we're pretty quarantined and locked down. Maybe in another month we'll start actually being in the same room together because things are getting better. But for now, yeah, every Wednesday we're gonna do one of these session breakdowns. If there's a song of ours you really want, you're really interested in us doing this for, please let us know. We got lots of music out there. So again, Johnny asked our names. I'm Paul, and that's Lauren,
I'm
who's
Lauren.
down here. That's Lauren, and we're Savoir. We're an indie rock band. We used to live in Brooklyn, and now we don't anymore. That's the quick bio. But we have a lot of music on Spotify, and obviously, we're usually touring around and stuff like that. We were actually supposed to be in South America for most of this month, and obviously that is not happening. So we are here making the most of it. But yeah, again, if you guys are having fun, if you have any other questions, please let us know. You can always write us here on Twitch or YouTube, Facebook. And again, Wednesdays at 1, dance parties Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And then Sunday mornings, Lauren and I do a back-to-back remote DJ set, which we just started doing, which was really fun. The technology allowed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'll go through all these comments a little bit too. And Lauren, I'll send him. I think you see these comments on Twitch though. Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Cool. Shall we call it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
call it.
Maybe
That was
I'll
fun.
should I put on? I'm just gonna put on the video for anyone that's interested in watching this whole song, listening back to the whole song now as the final product. We're gonna leave you with the music video for Giants, and hopefully. Oh yeah, and real quick, if you want to support us, we are, our little music factory up here. We've got, how do we turn this on? Come on. We have a little tip jar, no pressure. Venmo, Savoir, and PayPal. Since we're not really on the road much, we're not really making much money these days, so anything helps. But again, no pressure, and come say hi anytime. And we will leave you with the Giants music video, which we shot a few months after that. So do you want to say anything else, Lauren?
No, just thanks for being here, and we'll be back.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, see you guys soon. And here is the final product, Giants.
If you mistake when